It's probably. And then here's storage.
You guys ready?
Go home.
Okay.
You're like, okay, I'm ready to leave now.
Okay, if we can, all pay attention to Preston, and he's got a short little announcement to make, and then we'll get on with the questions and answers. Preston?
Meeting started.
Yes, it has. We've been recording for the last 30 seconds.
My name's Preston Devereaux. I'm a counselor here at Your Heart. Used to belong to this department. But anyway, I've been tasked this evening to inform you citizens of my discussion with Chief Daniels over in Seaside and how he feels about merging the two departments. There are some logistics that would have to happen for that. He agrees with me that in the future, because of the way that volunteers, young people that actually want to volunteer for anything today, that it is going to be, more difficult for volunteer fire departments to be able to be fully staffed without a. So he agrees with me that down the road, he's going to a big department. And he agrees with me that sooner or later, we would have to get his district on board, our district on board, in order for us to even begin the conversation about merging two cities. Fire department. In the meantime, this building needs to be replaced. My question, after the last town hall meeting we had, we were asked for every counselor to submit up to 5 questions. Well, the same question, 5 different ways were submitted to the city. People voted on 5 different ways on the same question. I'm here to tell you, my preference is to build the fire station exactly in the same location it is now, centrally located. There's a way to do that. It involves some engineering, some pile driving, some earthquake-proof steel structure. We can probably get FEMA grants or something like that to build a tower above this place. People in downtown Deer Heart. My advice to everybody, if you live in downtown Deer Heart, and you feel the shake, get up to Dennis Murphy's house. Lots of food up there, lots of libations. If you can get to Jim Kelly's place, he's the highest point in Deer Heart. But if you try and get across here, you're not gonna make it. If you're east of the school, you're not getting to the highway. So we need to do something in this town for the police and the fire so that we have a structure for somebody to go to. If there's a large earthquake, 6.2 to 9.5 or whatever it is, it's not going to make any difference. You know, the water's going to come up here. Your heart's not going to be except for the people who live on the ridges. That's the reality of it. And like I've said to Tom Horning, when he moves out of his mom and dad's place over there in Kylaway Flats at Seaside and moves up on the hill, I'll start believing whatever it is that he has. So anyway, this evening, what I would like from you folks is a definitive answer as to where it is that you think that the new fire and police facility should be. The future of this fire department, I'm happy to say, or I'm told that we're maintaining the number of volunteers that we've got in this department. And, make no mistake, I believe in this fire department. I think that they've done a good job. And, you know, I positively believe we should be in the same location, centrally local. Okay, any questions for me?
Can you explain, the location of the Gerhart School? What comparison of this location, say to that location, what ground level, what could it potentially be down there?
That's all gonna liquefy.
Because of the creeks, the two creeks in between.
Because that's east of Summit and everything like that. That's on the same plane as basically the highway is even higher than that. From everything that I've read and heard, highway's gonna drop 6 feet.
What about bringing in the rock and gravel, whatever, to raise it up to?
Well, you know, through eminent domain, you could probably get a lot up on Fifth and Summit. And, you know, put a small station up there and be on the ridge. But as far as the infrastructure, you know, trying to get the school grounds, you know, to be tsunami safe that's a long haul. Yes, sir.
Did I understand you to say in that little speech you gave that you are proposing or in favor of a vertical evacuation structure? Is that?
I think, absolutely.
Yeah, because I am very much, I've read up on them a lot, and I think it's the only way to go for Seaside, for instance, they have no other option. But it would be a real asset here for the people that can't get up there.
Correct.
You know.
Yeah, the thing is, I mean, you know, you can design that, you can have, you know, solar for batteries that would run a lift up to where it is so that you wouldn't have to drag yourself on up the stairs or whatever it is.
Well, you probably know that in the area, in Malaysia where they had over 50,000 people killed in that tsunami, they're building them everywhere.
There might be misunderstanding.
Well, you know, I watched a video of that, the Indonesian tsunami. There was a guy that jumped on a motorcycle, went 5 miles inland to a 3-story mosque, barely beat the wave, was on the roof, and the tsunami went up to the 2nd floor. I mean, it just totally changed topography. It's one of the things that I think everybody here should do, is you go on National Geographic or the NASA site or whatever it is, and they'll show you what the topography of that area looked like prior to and what it looked like afterwards.
The one that they built up on Tokeland, the Indian reservation, you could just go and walk up and see it. It was a $2 million effort. It holds 300 people. It's very, very simple. There's no lift, there's no anything, there's just stairs. But it looks very simple and it looks like something that can be done and be very safe.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that, you know, I mean, we could get a grant for that. I don't think we're gonna get grants for to build a new station, but I think that we could get grants for that.
Thanks, Preston.
President, my name is Bob Murray. We happen to own the school, as you know. We bought it to improve the entrance to the city. That's the only economic reason. However, we also always thought it should be owned by, or at least available to the community as a staging area. If you decide to build here, it's a convenient staging area while you go through the construction process. We've got 8.5 acres. There's a spot where you can put equipment temporarily if the structure is located here for a permanent fire station. No, we're here to cooperate and help if that's necessary as a community.
They're in the back.
President, is the idea to build a station here compliant with the comprehensive plan?
You know, the comprehensive plan can be changed. That's my opinion.
Does it have to be changed in order to build a station here?
I don't think so.
So you can just ignore the parts of the comprehensive plan that we don't like, this is a precedent we should set, that things in the plan that we just think, well, let's just ignore that for today, we can do that.
I think that building a fire station here in the exact same location, in my opinion, trumps whatever's in the comprehensive plan.
Why does the opinion of a single council trump the comprehensive plan?
That's up to everybody here in this city, every voter in this city, every taxpayer in this city. That's up to them. That's not up to me.
Why do we have a comprehensive plan?
Well, we have a comprehensive plan to keep Gerhard.
Well, so just the parts that we want to agree with at a particular point in time.
The number one thing is to keep Gerhard. The fire station is Gerhard.
Yay.
As long as you have your dances, we'll be happy.
That-
Twofold, two questions. First one is, can you elaborate on Fifth and Summit? Why that's been ignored for the last 5 years?
It probably isn't, the lot probably isn't large enough. It would really be a small station. It's I don't know, 100 by 100 lot up there.
But it's a higher elevation than here and a higher elevation than Miller Park.
Yeah. The problem is,
And it is in the residential area, and I'm sure that's everyone.
that's true. And the problem is that if we have an earthquake, you're stuck up there. You won't be able to get across this creek. You won't be able to get to the highway.
Well, if we have an earthquake, who knows who's gonna be.
That's exactly right. But this location here would serve, I mean, it's gonna have to be a fairly large earthquake in order for this thing here to have 15 feet of water over it.
So now the second question is, what parts of the comprehensive plan are we not addressing by building here? Maybe the doctor could answer that question.
I can, if you wish.
Yes, please.
Okay. Under LCDC Goal 7, Geology and Geologic Hazards. Page 10, General Plan Policy. Take reasonable measures to protect life and property to the fullest extent feasible from the impact of a local source, Cascadia tsunami. Page 11, policies related to reducing development risk in high tsunami risk areas. Prohibit the development of certain essential facilities and special occupancy structures within the L tsunami inundation area. LCDC Goal 11, public facilities and services, page 20. General policies, number 2, updated public facility plan to plan, fund, and locate future facility outside of the tsunami inundation zone whenever possible.
Okay,
Those are 3 examples.
3 examples. And the state of Oregon, after that came out, determined that the entire coast of Oregon was in the tsunami zone. The entire coast.
And the cities entirely in limitations.
In the city, yeah, except for, I mean, who knows?
Yes, but we still have choices. We have land available here, probably, that's higher than this. It could get us out to some degree, if not to a large degree, of the inundation zone.
And where would that be?
Well, apparently there was land up at,
Islands.
Islands and or cottages.
Cottages, that's one, yeah.
That's one, the park is another.
I think that the park has been discussed for the last 15 years.
We had the High Point, which at time was considered, now that property doesn't.
I don't think the Murphys were ever on board for
In
that.
terms of trying to find property that is outside the inundation zone, have we explored that to the greatest extent possible?
I think 1922 or 2022 pretty well exhausted that.
Well,
But that is- that doesn't mean it can't be
what
replaced.
what about the property at the, I don't know the name of the cottages, yeah, this land.
Outside the city.
Number one, it takes a fire station out of downtown Gerhart, which is where it does the most good.
And it's where most people want to have.
And that's where most people want it, okay? Number two, Joey Daniels over there is spending almost $2 million in retroughing his station because he can't move it.
What station is it?
Seaside,
Seaside.
okay? Sure, he could move it up on Phil Hill up there and Upper Broadway or whatever it is. But that just takes his response time to downtown and the area that he needs to protect. It puts him 5 to 10 minutes longer response time. Plus, he's got to go across 2 creeks.
But that's not comparable to the cottages area to downtown here.
It's certain,
It's just as far from there to here as.
it's 1.8 miles from this station here out to where they were gonna put this. Out where the cottage developers agreed to give us property, okay?
Yeah.
You gotta go out on the highway. It's gonna require a traffic light. You think the state highway department's gonna do that?
I don't know.
They're not interested in anything that goes on in this corridor. Since the people in Seaside turned the highway improvement down. Same as Astoria.
Yeah, may I ask what the other counselors think of it?
Well, this is my opinion. That's why I'm saying, I mean, you guys are gonna be the ones that are gonna be voting on the location there.
Yeah.
Wherever it is. You come on up with it, you guys come on up with another piece of property or whatever it is that you think is best suited for the city. Hey, I'll listen to you.
Okay, well, then we'll let other counselors answer if they want to. Thank you very much, Preston. All right, so when we begin, don't forget there are these comment papers that you can pick up anytime and write a question or something you want to say to us if you don't feel like speaking in public. But if you do, that's fine, because that's why we're here now. Does any other counselor want to speak to anything that's been said so far?
Yes, I'd like to speak. So Preston started off with talking about, at some point somewhere, I think he's talking about somewhere down the road, Preston, we would need to combine with Seaside, but you don't see that in our immediate future.
I see it within the next. Joey and I both agree that probably within the next 10 years or less.
Okay, so if we were to combine with Seaside, what would that change about our plans for this building, what we need for this building? Are you, in your mind, are you thinking because we would combine with Seaside somewhere off down the road, we would only build something like Reed and Hertig here? Or do we need an actual fire station that meets all of the OSHA requirements and all of the National Fire Protection Agency requirements and everything else?
Regardless of what we do, we're gonna have to follow those rules.
Okay.
Right, and let's not forget, the police department is in on this
Exactly.
because those guys gotta get out of that closet.
Please.
Right. So my reason for asking that is just to clarify in minds, I think some people think that because it's been proposed that maybe we would combine with Seaside, that combining with Seaside would solve the problem of not needing a building. And we need to make that absolutely clear that we still need a building.
Okay. So Gerhart has pretty well maxed it's area that we're gonna be protecting out. Okay? We could annex in the cottages, we could annex in the piece of property that's between there and the reserve. There isn't a whole lot more land to annex in across the highway. So basically, what you're gonna be doing is, this city is not, I've always said, how big do we want this village to grow? Okay, because I mean, when Bruce Maltman was the city administrator, I said to him, if you wanna be like Warrenton, let's annex everything, move our urban growth boundary on out to the school district 10 line, which it happens to be where the Grange is. Okay? You get all the land from here to there. Then then what are you? You're sure in hell not Gearhart. And so this new station would have to serve everybody that's here today, the existing houses and whatever future development that we have inside the city. And it would, I think that, I mean, when you get an architect on board and he designs a new building, I think that we can do with 3 bays or maybe 4. It's gonna have to be built according to NFPA standards and OSHA standards and emergency services standards, which is gonna be expensive. You're gonna have not only are you gonna have the fire department, but you're also gonna have the police department. We've got two police officers that service the city now, and hopefully soon to be a 3rd.
Friday.
So those kind folk and necessary folk are gonna need their own space. And, I mean, me being an ex-fireman, I've never been an ex-cop, so there's two you guys over there sitting at that end. But anyway, so, I guess it's up to you guys where it is that and what you want to do. And that's my pitch to the citizens of Europe.
Okay.
Thanks again, Preston.
So to finish up where I was going was, so we, even if, I mean, that's just good planning out for the next 20 years, what we're gonna need in 20 years. But it doesn't necessarily change the fact that we still need to address this building. Someday down the road, we're gonna have a personnel issue. We're gonna have to pay for personnel perhaps. But right now, what we need to worry about is our building. And when we're planning our building, we do need to plan for the eventuality that perhaps we will have to pay for staff. That'll have to be part of the planning. But right now, we're planning our building to meet the
needs of Gearhart.
what our needs are.
Yeah.
And our needs are not just, I want to stress that our needs are not just for a tsunami. We have a lot of risks that we need to build for. We could have a lot of things happening right away. A tsunami is just one event that we need to plan for. And sometimes you come in, often when I was in law enforcement, I was faced with a situation where you had no good choices. You had absolutely no good choices. And what you cannot do is become paralyzed or do nothing or continue to fight over the fact that you have bad choices. You have to come up with the most palatable of the unpalatable ideas, and you have to proceed. To me, it is unconscionable if we have no other land to build on, and there is no place else for us to build this facility. It's unconscionable to me. To me, it seems almost immoral to require that they continue to work in unsafe conditions, in conditions that OSHA says violate their rules, that are just not, I mean, they're just truly, truly problematic for us. And what could end up happening is we could end up with some very ugly sanctions. We could have some very bad fines. And just because it hasn't happened doesn't mean it won't. And those types of things can be very costly and terrible for such a small little community like ours, where we have a small budget. It's better for us to plan for what we can, solve the problems that we can. So ideally, in the best case, best world, if I were making my perfect facility, I would build this facility someplace where there wasn't going to be a tsunami threat. However, if the only place I can build it is where there might be a tsunami threat, I have to recognize that there could also be a fire danger. There could also be an active shooter danger. There could also be another plane that crashes here. There could be a number of problems that we have here that we need to address, we need to get prepared for. And in the meantime, we can't keep dragging this out and asking our people to work in unsafe conditions. We need to get going on this. So
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think that's what we've already discussed. Everybody, I think, wants to move on. We want to build here. And I don't think we're trying to recreate anything that we don't already have. We're trying to improve it and make it work so we can keep Gerhard from Gerhard.
And we've only had one plane crash in like 100 years. I really wanna know.
okay.
I know when it was, I was here.
But it's in the emergency world, you have to know that it's very poor planning to say, well, the odds are it's not gonna happen. That's how you become overwhelmed and you are not prepared for things. So Eric asked me what my opinion was, and I'm giving you my opinion. Ideally, we would build out of a tsunami zone. However, I am not willing to delay this project in order to build out of a tsunami zone. I think that there are other things operationally that we can do to overcome the fact that we would be building in a tsunami zone as far as storing equipment elsewhere. So that's my answer to you, Eric. It's not that I haven't given up that dream. It's just that sometimes perfect is the enemy of good. And if we can build it, let's build it, because I can't see making these guys continue to work in this building for a day longer than they have to.
In the back.
I just have a simple question. So you agree with Preston that it should be built here, even though it's not this, it's not a tsunami thing. So you agree with Preston?
I agree that we need to explore building here. I am not willing to, unlike Preston, I am not really ready to commit to any location. Because here's what I know, is that we're gonna get a good architect that's gonna come in here and tell us that we don't even know are gonna need to be included in this building. And we only have so much real estate here. And an architect will be able to solve a lot of problems, but he's not gonna be able to put apparatus on the second floor. So it's gonna be up to them. I think that we are going out for an owner's representative. I think we need to wait and have the owner's representative drive this bus. And I think we need to let the professionals tell us what we need to do, give us our options, and then we decide where it's going to be. But I'm telling you right now, my gut feeling, based on my past experiences, that this will likely be the most economical place. Well, as far as we already own the land. However, there are going to be a lot of logistics that may not make it the most economical to build here. And I think that some people might get a little bit of sticker shock when they find out how much it's going to cost to operate someplace else while we're building here, and some of the things that we have to do here to make this land worthy of building on. So there's still a lot of things ahead of us.
Well, the follow-up, you mentioned the architect, we already had plans designed for this place that I looked and you guys showed. So am I missing something?
Yeah, those were developed quite a few years ago, and as like in everything else, the world marches forward as far as engineering and what's required and regulations and things like that. Just like, for example, with our water treatment plant, my understanding was that during that delay, they changed the regulations on that, which drove up the costs of that. A lot of people were very upset about that, drove up the cost of that. That's the same thing could always happen with any large building project. Regulations can come in and change things for you very, very quickly. Yes.
I don't think anybody any citizen of this town doesn't have an immense gratitude for the police and fire that serve here. They volunteer for us, and I have a tremendous amount of gratitude for their service. I think we want the very best for their health and their safety and integrity and mental and physical health, the whole package. Having said that, they are the heart and soul of this town. When you drive into this town, you see City Hall, you see police, you see fire, you know it's safe, it's a small, quiet village, which we all love and want to keep. And I don't think that they should be moved. I think that it should take place right here. I'm in total agreement with Preston, right here in this space, and move forward as quickly as we can.
Okay, that's great. Here's a point that I haven't heard brought up yet, is where are we gonna store our equipment while we tear this building down? It's an enclosed, secure area that we need.
Where you have a covered basketball area, it's really fenced or enclosed in some manner.
Oh, you can't have it fenced. We're talking,
Enclose it in some manner, whatever.
Rent
it's required.
uh-huh,
rent tents,
Containers.
there's
Containers.
containers.
uh-huh.
Perhaps you should go to Portland, and ask what they do when they refurbish or rebuild. There are examples, and I think there are some residents here in town who are ex-firefighter management types from the Portland area.
Okay,
And they, they negotiated space like at churches. They took a lot of security with containers. And they got their stuff done.
okay. Well, there's a point that we can look into.
And you do have the resources of your retired people that would be happy to help you. Maybe you can give your contact. I don't know.
Right. So we can look into that.
You know, Gerhard owns, from City Hall, it owns east, across the ridge path, where the building department trailer used to be. There's a chunk of property over there that PPNL has. They no longer use it. We could get it. And you could put up a temporary pole building to house the equipment. That would be secured. And then after the new fire station is built, then you can put public works there. Chad, I mean, we've had this discussion about that. So, I mean, you know, there isn't anything, if you think outside the box a little bit, there isn't anything that you can't do.
Well, we all just.
All you have to do is pay for it, is correct. But you know something? You taxpayers here in Gerhart, this is the lowest taxing district on the coast. Joey Daniels' operating budget over there is 2 times what your taxes are here in this city. Just his operating budget for the fire department.
Let's keep it that way, for instance.
Well, you know, you're still paying off two water bonds. One of them's coming to, you know, it's gonna sunset here pretty quick. We're gonna have to go out for, you know, for whatever it is that's gonna pay for this. Your heart is too wealthy to get any basic grants.
Okay, I'm gonna ask this guy.
Yeah, I'm Greg Bush. I've been a resident or.
Oh, Greg,
I've been home since 2016. And I'm retired Coast Guard. Currently, I'm a federal law enforcement officer, and I manage, I'm in charge of 45 federal law enforcement people for the West Coast of the United States, and have a dozen law enforcement officers that I'm responsible for. And I know Dana's mentioned this, but it's an embarrassment what our police officers are working in and the condition of their locations. But mainly, I want to just point out that from the start, I've always looked at Leslie Miller Park seems to be ideally located as a facility. I'm really disappointed to hear that. It sounds like it's not even up for consideration when the rest of that area could be built out and made into the western portion could be made into a beautiful extension of the park available for the community, as well as having a higher elevation for building a replacement for this structure and housing all the emergency services. If that doesn't happen and you do rebuild here, one of the things to consider is if you do have one of those 350 to 500 year tsunami events, and you do need to have emergency services readily available, you should consider a mobile communication and tent platform that you can relocate up there and set up a temporary communication and emergency shelter. Because if it is a large event, the likelihood of this facility being available, and you can only fit so many people up in a tower type structure. So being able to put something up at high ground quickly and available for communication with the outside world and have some tents and other things is something we plan for.
So the mayor and I, is anybody else going down on next week?
Chad, are you going down?
So the mayor and I are going down to Newport next week, and they have an interesting building down there that was built for tsunamis. One of the things about a tsunami tower is that my understanding, and again, I'm not an engineer, but my understanding is that what makes them good for tsunamis is there's a difference between what's good for an earthquake and what's good for a tsunami. What's good for a tsunami is a building where the lower walls collapse and allow the water to travel through, which you can imagine is not great for a fire department where you try to protect your apparatus. So whether that would be something that would be incorporated in this or located somewhere else, or whether we could get some grants for that, that's all, we're in early days for that. Nobody is saying we won't look into that. The mayor has set it up to where we're gonna go and look at what they have down there. It's a marine development building or a marine building down there that we're gonna tour next week and take a look at that. But to me, one doesn't negate the other. We can look into that and also still move forward on this, because again, we're gonna get the experts to come in here and we can imagine in our minds what'll work, and an expert will come in and say, no, that won't work, but here's what will. So it's really gonna be up to us to get the right people in here and driving this bus. And that's one of the reasons why we put out for an owner's representative to get that ball running, to hook us up with people that know what they're talking about, and that we're not just, spitballing and throwing spaghetti up against the wall and trying to imagine something. It's better for us to have the experts tell us. That's my thought, but I'm going to shut up now because I've spoken enough.
Any other questions? Please. Jack.
What happened to the east side, the water tank location? I understand when this all first started back in 16 or prior to that, the water tank area was considered, and I think Horning put the kibosh on that because it was unconsolidated soil.
No, it's on basalt. It's actually bedrock and is a good location. The problem is you've got McCormick Garden area, which is all flooded. And in an earthquake, you will get liquefaction with groundwater at 20 feet. So if you've got groundwater 20 feet down, it will come to the surface, and anything sitting on that surface will move down. It just shakes and it just starts getting swallowed by the ground. So everything on that side of the highway is basically going to the ground's going to liquefy, and you can just imagine what's going to happen with everything else.
Well, just the point well taken, I understand. But don't we face soil liquefaction in practically all these locations of some kind?
Well,
Notwithstanding.
this building here is at 27 feet, I believe.
Yes.
Okay, and so our groundwater at this location is at the creek area. So we're 27 feet above, so we're not going to suffer the liquefaction exactly the same way right here. in the park over there, it is.
Yeah.
And you. So I don't know where I was going with that point. It's just, yeah, it's just. You gotta look at the liquefaction as a really, a sneaky thing. Because it subverts the ground's ability to support weight. And when you're shaking, if you've never been to Alaska and Anchorage and seen the Turnagain Arm, where all those houses just were on mud and silt flats, and they just walked right into the inlet and sank out of sight. It was the most horrific scene to see in pictures as that happened. And they're building there again. Because, you know, we've had our earthquake, we're not gonna have another one. Which is, you know, short-term memory loss.
That's California, how that works.
We know Fullerton. Yes.
I would like to ask Andy to just review what the scenario would be if this was a substation for Seaside.
So thank you, Preston, also for all the kudos, appreciate that. Just the concept of like a satellite substation, would not necessarily mean that we're staffed here. If we were to be staffed with Seaside model, we would have to hire at minimum nine staffing personnel, which would cost just staffing alone about $1 million a year. So that is something cost-wise to consider. That's not operational, that's just staffing. Because the schedule will either be 24/48 or 48/96 to have 8 staff with one engine crew. But realistically, when you look at substations in the state of Oregon, they're like our heritage station, no one's there. Right, at least here, you have Chief I and the volunteers that are very, very close. Whereas Heritage is kind of where we go to get apparatus, or if somebody's available to grab apparatus, that's what it comes from. One thing that we need to think about with the bays is the possibility of having to maintain an ambulance. So 4 bays might not be enough. An issue has arose recently, as in the last 24 hours. That we may have to start considering that. So, we're not, again, asking for much, but just keep in your mind that there may be a possibility to have to provide more services, in the future for our residents. Yes, ma'am.
Is there ever a situation that there should be a professional staff and also volunteers work at the organization? Does that ever happen?
Yeah, combination departments are around. Unfortunately, when you start going into combination departments, volunteers tend to get to the wayside. And so you'll start to see a massive decrease in your volunteerism because they won't start making apparatus, they get treated differently. It's the unfortunate part of the fire service. I wouldn't say it's a management thing, I think it's just we have the exact same certifications, but there's always been a divide. There is a couple stations that are successful in it, but if you look at Clackamas and Portland, like their volunteers, they literally are there to clean up. Which that's not what our volunteers wanna do, right? Our volunteers wanna use their certifications and their training, right?
Well, that's a cultural thing that I think could give it.
They haven't overcome it in a long time, unfortunately. I've watched it 16 years. It has not changed, it's gotten worse, actually. I've come from combination departments. I would love to see that change. It is possible. And I agree, it is a culture thing. But it is possible, but still, you're still looking, if you were to do combination department, you're still looking at, you have to maintain your status, you still would have to have those 9 people paid full time.
Does
that answer that question?
What's the source on the 9 people?
So that's on a rotating schedule. So NFPA standards, you have, and OSHA standards, you have to have 3 people engines, period, in the story. So a 3-person engine on a rotating schedule, but ABC schedule, that's 9 people. And that's not accounting for any sick, overtime, vacation days, and that's minimum 9 people.
And the assumption is that would be conditions placed on substation.
That's if we had staffing. So if we were to merge with Seaside and they were to staff this full time with career staff, that would be the staffing model.
So we apparently don't have an agreement that we want to have substations, so.
No, that was just a rough to answer the question.
And a substation would have to be within 5 miles of the main station. When you're talking about location.
Another question?
Yeah, I think we still have to look at funding and expense. I mean, I know that here are, I mean, it may be, you know, have nice houses and everything, but not everybody can afford to have their taxes go up a lot. So, I mean, that has to be some sort of consideration in figuring having a station here versus someplace else, you know?
Right. Okay,
I think we voted at the last town hall meeting for getting an architect in and having somebody look at this. And I think the place to start, without all these other questions, is to get that person in here and know where we're at so that we can talk about it.
that's why we've put out the RFP for the owner's rep. And once we get response, and how many responses have we had?
There, I think we're gonna have 3.
3? And we go over it, then we can choose one. And that is the person, because I don't want to do this. I don't have the expertise to run a show like this. I want someone to come in and go, this is what we're going to do and this is how we're going to do it. And then it's on him.
I agree.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I said him. Yes, that person there will be responsible to the owners. I am,
All by their last name.
yeah, okay. Well, anyway, that's my problem. I go, you guys, I'll see you later when I leave the ladies of the office and I have to come in every time and go, ladies, not guys. Okay, so I run that show. My daughter tells me all the time. Thank you for telling me. I always like to be corrected in public. Makes me smile. Any other questions?
Is this property built on fill?
You know, they say it is. I don't know if it is. Nobody knows until we dig the floor up and get underneath here and take a look. But you could pretty much count on something like that. I mean, back in the 50s, what else are you gonna do?
They brought sand in here
Just sand?
and pit rock. But the thing is what you do is the structural engineer is gonna determine the size of the building, how many steel pilings you need to drive down through here. And, you cut holes in the concrete floor here and drive the pilings down and then pour a pile cap on top of it. Build a steel structure that moves just like Seattle or San Francisco or LA or whatever else it is. It's, every dock in British Columbia is built on pilings and a pile cap.
Questions? This is what this meeting's all about, is asking questions and getting answers. So if you got a question, go ahead. Yes.
Have you considered the distances people have to walk to get out of the inundation zone in your placement and how many people that impacts? My point being, people that live south of here are in the most danger of a smaller tsunami coming in.
Yes.
And so one of the things that has occurred to me, having an evacuation site here, they could get to within a few minutes, would be beneficial for those people. And many of those people are among the full-time residents, as you well know.
Yes.
And I just wondered if anyone had looked at those numbers and just glanced at it.
I have not looked at those numbers. You know, I thought if we built here, they would have to have some kind of evacuation tower. And that's one of the reasons why we're going to look down there at the Hatfield Center. Because it's well, you know, honestly, in a good world, we'd have them all over the place. I mean, the east side, you'd have to have 2 or 3 on the highway just to cover the east side. And that doesn't even include in town here. So then you've got, you know, 60-foot towers all over Gerhard. And that's where we're going, boys. Get on top. Let's just take a look at the sites. But no, it is something that I want if we build here. And, you know, this has only been the 3rd town hall. Their first 2 were 77 and 70. This one, I believe, we're sitting at somewhere in the neighborhood of almost 40 people. This does not represent a majority of the voters. This is one thing I don't know how to do to reach more people besides putting reader boards out, which we can't, even though we're the city, we can't put reader boards out there saying, come to the town hall and tell us what you think. Give us some input. If someone's got an idea of how to get people in, because I'm not saying I'm counting, but a lot of people are recognizable from other town halls. And so if you're getting the same people, you're getting the same response, but you're not getting any of that new input. And that's kind of like what happened with my survey in 22. There were 300 respondents. That was maybe a 1/5 of the voting population. And it isn't something that you need to analyze because you don't have a baseline big enough to draw any conclusions on it.
How many people are signed up through the blog, the City of Gerhard blog?
I'm not involved with the blog.
Somewhere near 2,000.
Okay, surprised by that. And how many people get water bills here? Does anybody know that? I mean, why don't we put something in the water? So it's about the same number. No, okay.
Yeah, well, I send my survey out in
No.
the water bill. I got 300 response, which, you know, saddened me, but, you know, didn't surprise me either.
You gotta also account for timing too. At the time that you put your survey out, it was still raw. There were still a lot of
Yeah.
people that had that were over it. And even today, there are still people that are like, we're not, nothing has changed. It's all the same stuff. They're just telling us the same stuff. So, you know, you have to overcome that. Sometimes a little bit of time can heal those wounds. And maybe the next time we put it out, if we wait it and if we do the timing right, maybe we'll get better responses later. I still believe that we need to slow down a little bit, let the OR get in here, the owner's rep get in here and direct this for us before we make any real decisions. I am not, again, I would never make you any promises that we can build here. I would tell you, we have to look at building here. We have no choice but to look at building here. But I also want people to understand that cost is also another factor why people said no. Some people said, I don't care where you build it, but not for that price. And if the price to build it here is going to be, you know, much, much more, there's going to be people saying, well, yeah, they're just, you know, they're trying to build a Taj Mahal there. And that may not be the case. The case may be, we just are building what the regulations say we have to build.
Did somebody ever talk to Banks? I mean, Banks has a new fire station, a new training center with it. And I think it was 34 million or something that was really amazingly reasonable compared to.
The land was donated,
Bill?
The materials were all donated. A lot of the labor is, all the electrical and everything else like that is all donated. I mean, those guys, you know, they serve a huge district.
That would make the difference.
This young lady got a question.
That young lady's got a question there. Go ahead.
Right?
Was it a long time your arm was up?
Possibly, maybe consider to get more people in, change the time to
So
7 o'clock.
at night,
Okay.
do you think that would make a difference, an hour?
That's what we had the previous town halls at, 7 o'clock.
Oh, we had one in the afternoon
No, I'm
too.
not talking now, back in 2022 and previous to that, they were all at 7 o'clock.
I'm trying to work with staff, you know,
Scan that, yes.
because
but
we got an hour of cleanup after this and
We could grab a chair and stack them.
that's true, but
I'm just saying experiment, possibly.
I can experiment.
You know, change the times.
Sure.
That would bring in more people.
If, 7 o'clock, we'll see about that for April. We'll see about that.
To your concern, Terry, about reaching a lot of people, I believe in the last city council meeting, your city attorney gave you good guidance on your idea of an advisory vote this coming May. And evidently that was rejected by council.
Right, that's because it shuts down all of City Hall. And they can't say anything, we can't use anything to promote our advisory vote.
We went through this, didn't we, back in 2022, where the ethics rules prohibit full-time public employees or public employees, excuse me, from speaking or promoting volunteers on company time. So I'm still confused why you wouldn't consider the advisory vote. These people, as far as I heard, Mr. Watts, public employees should not be speaking about or promoting any particular opinion. Now, they can, on their own personal time, personal capacity, absolutely.
Uh-huh.
So what was it that, I think it's a great idea to have that special initiative vote, and then you're gonna know definitively before we end up spending a ton of money. It's only, what, 2-3 months off.
Oh, we missed that deadline.
Yeah.
That was the beginning of March.
So one of the problems is that you're asking us questions and you might get 5 different answers. Like, for example, I can give you my answer for that is that I agree with you that at some point we may want to go out for an advisory. When it comes down to the location and do we want to proceed, then yes, we would go out for an advisory vote. However, in my opinion, it was too soon to do that. We're still in the exploratory. We haven't gotten our owner's representative. We have a lot of details we still need to work out. We couldn't even have this meeting right here in this building right now had we gone out for an advisory vote because we can't use city property. So for me, why would you go out for an advisory vote when you're not ready to ask the questions yet? And it could all change when we get an expert on board and starts guiding this process. So to me, it was too soon. That's why I said no. It wasn't because staff wouldn't be able to answer questions. It was a lot of reasons.
Well,
That's why I said no.
We spent 5 years listening about a whole host of different.
You did, but there are a lot of new people that have come into town and the plans in the past there was a different thought process in the past. It was about, the push was to get it out of a tsunami zone. The voters have said they don't care apparently about building in a tsunami zone. So we have to look at this with a fresh set of eyes. We have to look at this. We have to start over again. But we still have to understand that some of the other arguments are still spilling over into this. For example, if you talk about putting a training room in there, when we're talking about just a classroom, that might even be a quarter of the size of this building. People think that you're talking about a training center that's a regional training center that's huge and becomes the Taj Mahal. So we do have a lot of conversations we still need to have.
Point, again, well taken, but, there was a tremendous amount of discussion, debate over the last 5-6 years. There's a lot of people who are educated to a lot of different questions. I don't think we're completely ignorant on the issues.
No, absolutely
I
not.
think what you're basically saying is that you want to, choose my word here carefully, not re-educate us, but to give us more information to persuade us to do what you need. Is that correct?
No, and I take exception to you saying that. We're not trying to persuade. We're hiring a consultant, yes.
So why take?
We're not educating you. Why would you not want to follow the direction of an expert? Why would you not want to hire somebody who could save every bit of money that we put into his salary or into whatever we pay him? He could save us that and help us avoid making very costly expenses.
And I know what you have to do as a consultant to survive. I don't know who owner rep is, who's the owner, is it all of us, or is it city council?
It's city council is as the elected official,
I'm
yeah.
sure he's gonna have a proclivity to please and to come up with things that you are gonna guide him on, which we have no access.
We just all voted on it.
Well, this would be in person.
I would rather go with the voted officials than to have one individual be the one to drive that, or to have.
Yeah, okay.
I would rather have all of us have a say rather than one consultant.
Well, and you're gonna have a say. You are ultimately going to be the ones that control the purse strings. You are ultimately the ones that are gonna control whether a bond measure goes forward. So it's in all of our best interest to craft a project that will be,
And I agree with that.
that will serve the needs and desires of the community at large.
Jack, if Dana's talking, would you give her the floor until she's done?
Both ways.
I know that, but you were walking over top of her with your conversation, and let's just keep it
Go ahead.
civil.
For the past couple of years, we've heard over and over and over again that we need to have town halls, and now we're having town halls. We're giving information, and now we are having a night where we are not giving you information. We are having a night where we're saying, okay, we've given you some information. Now give us some feedback. What else do you need to know? What else would help you make your decision? And you are not the only person that we're catering this to. Over and over and over again, I have heard, thank you for having these. Thank you for providing this information. I learned something that I didn't know. I've heard from people that have thanked us for not having the advisory vote. Some people that are normally in your group also, I have to say. So we are trying to cater to a wide variety of opinions and craft the best that we can, but we are not going to make the same mistake where we assume that we know that everybody understands exactly what we're talking about, that we're not talking about the Taj Mahal. We're not talking about building Reed and Hertig. We're talking about building what the regulations say that a fire station has to have and what would be safe for our folks, and planning for the future.
And the police
And I'm sorry, and the police.
I agree.
Right,
Not to shut you out.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
I'm gonna go to Eric.
So I appreciate and I understand the sentiment of people who would like to keep a station here. And I made, my opinion, clear that I'm an advocate for Pontiac to be outside of tsunami zone. But the question I'm gonna ask now is just kind of separate from, gets to Dana's point about, well, the reality of doing it in this space may have costs and we'll just leave it at cost, and need to revamp this and prepare this and work on a temporary location. Is it possible that when you bring in an OR, that they can give us an option, that they can assess and evaluate this site, but compare it to something else? Now, for example, I'm not advocating for the park, and I understand people's sentiment about that also. But just for example, what if it costs $9 million at the park and it costs $16 million here? I'm not saying that's what it would be, but what if?
What if is a good question.
Right. So in that regard, not necessarily the park, just on this stage, sure, evaluate it, but it would sure help me, and I think it would help a lot of people, if we had something to if there was something to compare it to, if there was any alternative location that your OR can find and assess, so we at least can get a choice, so that we can at least compare. Because I just have a feeling the price tag here, I think the price tag anyway is going to be of concern to a lot of people. In terms of why the last vote lost, I'm not sure how much of it was location and how much of it was cost. I know it's both, but I don't know which way it was weighted. But now that we've waited more years, more time has gone by, costs go up, it's going to cost a lot of money no matter where we go. So if we had at least a choice to compare point A and point B, I think that would be helpful if the OR can do it.
I believe he can, or she can, or it can. They can. Oh, it could be an AI. I don't know nowadays, you know, geez. They've got these things.
If they can, I think that would be helpful.
Okay, this gentleman right here.
I had two things. One of them kind of been analyzing that I had when I came in, and due to things that you said, I still want to introduce that thing. But first I wanted to respond in historical part about your survey that came out back with the water bills.
Mm-hmm.
And the point that I wanted to make is that I had come to a few council meetings prior to that. And one of the big discussions that we had was the ineffectiveness of yes and no surveys. And so I would encourage you in the future possibly to do possibly inquiring for information or opinions versus saying a yes and a no answer to each. My particular one that I put out, I put lots of different information outside of those two options, but I think the biggest thing that I want to emphasize is that yes and no surveys don't leave the options for input for a lot of people's understanding.
Yes.
So I just wanted to, that was my reinforcement for that particular statement that you had made earlier.
Okay, good point.
The other one that I wanted to say was, and there have been different things, Mr. Preston talked about it, but the place that I've seen that I go by all the time, and some of this you're talking about how the land is structured and things, but is the tax lot of 3600, which is just off of the highway on Halilla Lane, is 2+ acre property. And I just wanted to make a suggestion that that might be something that, because just up the way on the other side of the water, they built quite a structure for I believe it's a landscaping business over there. But currently that's a vacant lot, and just happened to be perusing the tax lots and seeing different things and saying, that's an accessible area. It's also, but of course, the big contingent there, like Mr. Preston was saying, is that you would have to put an access light at that point. But I also, that was one of my things that I wanted to talk to you about too, was as a different side and a different concern was the highway itself, obviously is a speeding nightmare. But so I don't see as a stoplight would be a bad thing, but anyways, it was just a thought to say that that particular zone that is unoccupied, that has elevation, that is on the west side of the swamp, it just might be a consideration thing.
Well, that's something that we could look into, but it's, that's a cost buying the land, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, and I believe with the,
But I don't, just, it didn't look to be an exorbitant amount at this point in time, anyway.
Okay.
But
I'll take a look. I didn't know about 2 acres over there,
170,000.
170,000. Okay,
The problem with that is where Sturgill did his landscaping deal. Bill Bergeson used to own that, and he took the railroad grade, which was built up with sand. It's where the old railroad tracks used to be. And he kept filling the swamp. And state lands came and said, you need to suck some of this stuff back. You got water on both sides of the highway. And Bill said, well, I don't know what I'm doing. And the guy went, you want to see a photograph of your property 5 years ago? Bill said, how many cubic yards do you need me to take out? Willing to argue. So that's, I mean, basically that ridge right there is, the railroad built that up. That wasn't always there.
And again, I'm just proposing an option that's out.
sure.
Yeah.
And because there have been enough new houses constructed in that area, and I'm not saying that the fire station is the same constructed foundation that a house is, because obviously it's not. But there have been many larger structures and full housing communities that have been built right in that same area. And I was just, particularly looking at the access was there, the size of the property was there, the pricing was not exorbitant, so just some of the, like Dana has said, some of the options, were check the box. Some of
Right.
The options are not check the box, but we can't, the perfection is not available. And between the Pacific Rim of Fire, which we can do nothing about, the whole city pretty much lays in a destruction valley, so.
Right.
Thank
you. I'm gonna go to George because he had his hands up several times.
Only once.
Only once, but keep going.
I was, a couple comments. One, I was delighted to hear from Dana the point that I want to stress again, because I think it gets lost, that tsunami is only one of many risks that face a community, and that public service building is intended to try to address. Similarly, public safety is only one of many goals that a city government is intended to address. And I have been dismayed in the past month or two to hear people again coming back, floating the idea, and I know there are advocates for the idea of using a public park for a fire station. I have frequently heard people say that, well, the Leslie Miller Park is free because we already own it. And I think that that is so wrong-headed. That property is not free. It is probably the most valuable piece of real estate on the Oregon coast. And it's of tremendous value in its current use to the community. And I want to remind people, particularly the council, that the city government engaged in an extensive multi-year process after many, many years of talking about doing it, actually did go through a process of developing a public parks plan, which involved many community members on committee for more than a year. It involved surveys, public hearings before the planning commission, long debates, much discussion at council, and was ultimately adopted in 2022. And as somebody read some parts of the comprehensive plan, I want to bring to your attention some parts of the city parks plan, which was adopted recently. Policy number 1 says, the city will preserve all park properties currently owned or controlled by the city as public parks dedicated for open space and or public recreation, such use having been determined to be the highest and best use for all such properties and in the overall best interest of the Gerhart community. That was policy number 1. Policy number 2 said the city will seek to retain current zoning classification for all properties within the urban growth boundary that are currently zoned as park and open space. Policy number 5 specifically relates to Leslie Miller Dune Meadow Park and says the city will maintain Leslie Miller Dunes Meadow Park primarily as ocean view open space for public recreation. But will, over time, subject to the availability of financial resources, endeavor to enhance this park with limited improvements that are carefully designed to blend in with the surrounding residential properties and to avoid detracting from the scenic nature of the park. The city will not convert any portion of this property to use for parking of vehicles, since it is the intent the park users will access the park primarily by walking or riding bicycles, and there's adequate area for public parking within the Pacific Way and Marion Avenue rights of way. So I'm just shocked to have people again suggesting that it's even open for consideration. The Leslie Miller Dune, the notion that if it costs less to build there, that it costs less is, in my opinion, ridiculous. There's other high ground, and I think Preston mentioned we could, through eminent domain, acquire property. I don't know why the city has never looked at that, but if there's a great desire to have a station out of the tsunami zone, property can be acquired through eminent domain. But I believe the citizens and the city council have spoken on the park is going to stay as a park.
But if you've seen the drawings that were sent about 5 years ago, the park was enhanced. The park, I thought, looked very
Exactly.
nice with them.
Well, not in my opinion, and not in the opinion of the council that adopted this park.
Well, I know, I think that I certainly was here and I know that it was very unpopular. But I think the park is very underused at this point. And I think that enhancement is really what we need. I don't know if the fire station should be here, but I think the most important thing we're talking about is that people want the fire station downtown. And that leaves a very limited space here and there, and there's really nothing else.
Pat, in the back, or
Yeah, I just want to reinforce the last two commenters. I think consultants are great, and we ought to benefit within reason from all the consultation we can get on this. But I think you're a step out of bounds if you say, really not committed to a location until the consultants have a look at it. Because I think your little poll that you took at the last town hall meeting was pretty darn clear. And I think the vote you got in the election was pretty darn clear that it didn't say that it wasn't downtown. But I think from talking to people, that had a lot to do with it. I think people want their fire stations down here. And I would suggest to you, you might have to test this with some polling, that people might be willing to even pay a little bit more than at some other location just to keep it down here. And that's just how people feel. I think so. I think you're making a mistake if you say, well, we're gonna keep that in suspense till the consultants have spoken. That's a real mistake. And if you ended up going with another location, you might get voted down again. Because I think people want it downtown, the majority of people.
Okay, thank you. Pat?
Yeah, Mayor, just one thing that following this, I was wondering, we're talking about owner rep or hiring an owner rep now or something. My question is, when the prior fire station bonds came up, when we had the drawings and we had the input, we had the dollar amounts assigned to it, all those numbers and what they look like, did we have an owner rep for that?
No, we did not.
Why not?
I had never heard of an owner's rep.
Then why do we have one now?
Because I've heard of an owner's rep, and I don't want to have to do this. Honestly, if someone's got a professional degree in facilitating getting a building built for an entity, i.e. a city, or some other big national, why wouldn't you go with him or them? Because it makes sense to get the best possible team together, to get the best possible conclusion to your job.
Yeah, but along those lines, we spent the city center, a lot of money,
Yes,
a lot of money. And why we didn't do that before, or why the change, and I do have concerns about when you hire a consultant, the consultant typically wants to go with who's ever sitting across the table from them. And that's that's definitely a concern for consultants, and how they get paid.
yes. And I agree. And I think that's where bringing them to these town halls will open the door for everybody to say what they've got to say and not just listen to what we're saying. I want the best possible outcome for this. I really do. I want to see a new building. I don't care where it's built. I want a new building. These people deserve it. We deserve it. And we need to do it now because it's just gonna cost so much more in 5 years, in 3 years. We've got to move. And I want the best team. And if it costs money, then so be it. It's gonna cost money. But the best team is the team that'll get it done, save us money, make sure everything is right as far as the job, because there's nobody that I know of right here that can do this.
The premise of the questions that I keep hearing are along those lines are that we are going to, that city council has some mysterious, we've got some alter plan that is not going to meet, it's gonna be a plan that we want, that you all are not gonna want. So we're gonna end up right back where we were a couple of years ago, which is the definition of insanity. The definition of insanity is keep doing the same thing over and over and over again and expect a different result. We're not willing to do that. But we have not had an OR before. And this OR is going to, yes, he's going to represent us as your elected officials. But the bottom line is he's not catering it to us. It's going to be catered to you. What will you vote for? We cannot continue to argue about it's gonna, it can't cost that much money, but it has to be there or it has to be here. There are still people in this community that are not in this building today that have already told me they will not vote for it if it's put here. We have to get those, if this is where it's gonna be, then we have to get those people on. You cannot assume that there are enough people that want it here that they will be able to carry the vote. We can't afford to do that. We have to make a project that doesn't alienate somebody, and perhaps an owner's rep will help us guide us to something that we can all agree on, and we don't continue to have these delays and these fights. That's the point to me of having an OR. We've not done this before. Let's try something new. Let's get somebody who's going to give us some continuity, because we don't even know who's going to be sitting at this table come November. That's going to be all up to you. It can be completely different, but this project can't stop and start each time we get new faces at this table.
Yeah, I'm standing up because I'm short and nobody can see me back. So, Mr. Mayor, to your point, am I understanding correctly that the OR will come to town halls and present his information and his opinion to the citizens of this community?
That's correct.
Correct. And that was that was written into our bid, was that would be somebody who would help us, guide us.
And to your point, Dana, you're not going to please all the people
No, we're
all the
not.
time.
We know
There are
that.
gonna be people that are dissatisfied. But I think that having an OR shows a sign of wisdom in getting information about what's available to be done at this property, what the cost will be, and what other sites are available, which I'm not in favor of, but people deserve to know. And I think having him come and speak to the citizens of the community, not just to the city council, will benefit the whole project tremendously.
Well, that's what we want, is the benefit for the whole project.
For once, I'm on board with you, Mr. Mayor.
We'll write that on the calendars.
Mr. Mayor,
Okay, in the back.
Mr. Mayor,
What, just, excuse me. Yes,
you've got hands up online that have been waiting for a while.
Oh,
oh, go ahead and finish.
Everything sounds confusing, but it's really simple. All the standards that you're looking at in a public building, every public building is that way. You gotta have wheelchair ramp, you gotta do all this stuff. But I think really when you and Dana go down south, you're gonna look at a structure down there that's already been built. There's only, I would say, we used to track all the McGraw-Hill projects in the state of Florida, every project for years. And you're only gonna find a handful of contractors that are gonna build this station. And when you go down there and look at that one down there, that's even gonna make it a smaller group. And most groups are, construction manager, general contractor, and they manage and take care of stuff. They necessarily don't build the whole building, but they'll manage and then hire all the stuff and get stuff in and make it real simple. But, you know, it's not complicated. It's just that when you look at that building down south, it's gonna make it and bring it down even closer and perhaps settle some of it. Because if you put up a steel structure like Preston's talking about, you drive the piling, you hang steel trusses or whatever you do, you know, yeah, you can have your platform, but you can also have your training room up there too. I mean, it gets simple once you get a little bit tighter on it, so.
That
Okay.
Mr. Lee, he actually wrote a book on commercial construction standards. So I would hope that you utilize it with the.
Thank you. I'm going to go, Christie, there's I see one hand in the upper left.
That's Nisa Roberts.
Hi, folks. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Great. Thanks. I apologize for not being on camera. Long day. I just want to share that I'm actually feeling good about the conversation tonight, primarily as it relates to the owner's rep. I've been engaged in conversations over the last couple of years with multiple people, probably some in that room, many not in that room. And I actually think that it's time for us to see some focus so that we can re-engage. I think projects like this are a funnel, and I think we are circling the top of the funnel again in perpetuity, and we need an opportunity for someone with some skill in looking at a large issue and understanding what it takes in order to provide us with some focus and some ways that we can engage productively with each other. So I want to share that to wrap that up. Yes, on an owner's rep, I think this is a positive step forward. And I think it was Dana, you're in my head with the comment about the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over. We cannot. And so I think this is a positive change. I also want to make a comment on what I perceive as a really positive effort by this council and by many citizens in order to make sure that their neighbors are heard, right? We're talking about reach and involvement and how do we get more people to hear and have the opportunity to share their thoughts. And I want to just say that I think you're doing an awfully good job at inviting our community to speak with each other. I've been involved in multiple boards. I watch a lot of civic happenings, Gearhart, Seaside, other jurisdictions. And if that's something that you do regularly, you will probably be a little bit disheartened to discover that there's not a ton of engagement on a general and a routine level. It's not uncommon for, say, it will be less than 10 and sometimes less than 5 folks to attend a school board meeting, for example. And certainly when tensions are high and there are large issues at stake, that gets bigger. But overall, I want to share, I think you're doing a really good job at inviting people, giving them opportunities to speak. And I don't know that I would put a black mark on this council for that. And I think the last thing I want to say is kind of back to the owner's rep and kind of just back to the general feelings that we've had as a community in the last 2 to 5 years, is that it may be time for us all to take a breath and hold on to the feelings that we've had and what our impressions are of our neighbors, of our city staff, of our counselors, past and current, maybe future. And let's just watch what maybe we can make happen. I think, again, this owner's rep is great, and we need each other. We're a tiny community, y'all. We really do. I've said before, let's not do things that make it really uncomfortable to run into each other at the post office, because that's not who we are and that's not where we want to be. So thanks so much.
Thank you. All right, look, I was gonna try and wrap this up at 7:30. That seemed like a reasonable time. Chiefs, do you have anything you want to add?
I just appreciate the sentiment from the community, from the police department, and the understanding that we want to go in a positive direction in the future forward. And I'll thank everybody for coming out.
Yeah, same thing. Thank you guys for your support and showing us that it's there, because some of the firefighters have been tough to feel that for the last few years.
Chief?
Thank you. If you have any questions, you know where to find us.
Is there anyone else with a pressing question that?
Would it be permissible and worthwhile to ask those in attendance which they, what they prefer, whether this site or another site? Is that possible to do?
I could do that, but I believe the sediment is right here. But all those in favor of building right here, please raise your hand. All those in favor of building somewhere else, please raise your hand.
Well, it depends.
Thank you, Eric.
I think the whole sentiment of this entire thing is kind of.
I suggest we not have the yes and no.
Yes, okay. I'm a simple man. I like yes and no's. You give me an opinion and I'll give you mine. Okay. Anyway, thank you very much for coming out and
Do you want to add questions?
oh, and if you've got a question, come up and get this piece of paper, write it out and give it to me. We'll get back to you on it.
Thank you.
Thanks, George.
I've been wanting to say something.
Mr. Mayor, do you want some of those by the door?
Oh.
Maybe bring them in or mail them in.